Welcome, everybody. Welcome the large number, as Jonathan said, of you in the room and those that are joining us online as well. My role this morning is to try and put today in some context, to look at how all the presentations fit together and how they underpin why Railpen, working on behalf of the RPS, the scheme, is fit for the future. So this time last year, when I stood here at my first conference and introduced the new operating strategy, I spoke about the 4 pillars that underpin the operating strategy, namely how we strive for simplicity in everything that we do, how we have an obsessive focus on value, how we enable our people to be able to do the best on behalf of members every day, and finally, how we are fit for the future, the theme of today's conference. And those pillars remain as relevant today as they did 12 months ago. In fact, I would say they're even more relevant today. And here's why. If we look, and Christine started to speak about it, at the external environment, the cost of living pressures are being driven by a relentless pressure on inflation globally that is making it harder to make every pound work. We're seeing geopolitical instability across the pond and elsewhere. And in fact, you don't need to look across the pond. You don't need to look far outside this country to see how political instability over the past 24 hours has literally a day-on-day impact on the cost of lending. We're also seeing the rise of new technologies, artificial intelligence, and changing the way that the world works. That changes the way that we need to work. So putting that all together, that demands that we respond appropriately. Not reactively, but with sound, considered judgment in the best interests of our members and paying appropriate regard to really important issues like cyber resilience. So if that's the context, let me look back for 12 months and indulge me for a moment while I talk about what we've actually achieved over the past 12 months. In the first area of delivery focus, and Christine alluded to this, this is about putting right a number of challenges that we had within our business. And I'm delighted to confirm, and many of you will have read in the reports, that we completed that project. We completed it several months early at the end of April, and we completed it significantly under budget. And there's a number of facts and figures that I think are really impressive. So during that year, we analysed 32,000 member records. We undertook 12,000 tax remediations, 85,000 individual transactions were reviewed. We processed 1,000 bereavement cases. We reconnected thousands of members with their benefits, so they will be able to receive those reliably. Our service levels are improving, and we're a much better operational control environment. So that's a great foundation to be able to move on from. And we're also, and you'll hear a bit later from our member services leadership team around how we're looking at key events, key moments in people's lives and why that matters. You started to hear some voice of the member in the earlier section, and you'll hear more about that in that section later on. So the second area of progress is on value and performance. And this clearly has been another important subject. So our finance transformation program is a great example, somewhat under the covers, but that will really drive value and performance on behalf of our members, because it will now enable us to deploy resources more effectively, to avoid duplication, to be able to track and report on results. So it's a really important, and I'm not using the phrase lightly, transformation. And on the investment side of the business, it's critical that we deliver value. The quote that we've used so many times, but is still relevant today, 75 pence in every single pound that we pay out in benefits comes from investment growth. So that disciplined long-term approach to investment growth, which you'll hear a bit more about immediately after me, is very, very important. The third of the areas is on advocacy and influence externally. We're an important voice, and building on the success that we reported on last year with the reduction of the pension protection fund levy to zero, we've had further successes in the year. The PPF admin levy has been abolished. The pension schemes bill, which has been going through Parliament, I'm sure many of you will have been following that, received royal assent only a couple of weeks ago, is now in a significantly better state than it was when it started that progress through the two houses. Specifically, mandation. So the ability for government to tell us where to invest members' assets is significantly watered down. And instead, there's a significant focus on improved planning, improved approach to infrastructure, improved approach to capital markets. So it creates the environment such that we can invest in the UK because that makes sense to us, but only if it delivers those superior risk-adjusted returns that we need to be able to deliver. And finally, on people and capability, having the right people with the right skills, doing the right things is vital to be able to service our members. And importantly, and I spoke a bit about this last year, doing that in the right culture is what makes the difference. And speaking personally, when I joined just over 18 months or so ago now, one of the things that attracted me, to be honest, and one of the things that was evident from day one was the passion of everybody within Railpen and across the trustee to work day on day on behalf of the members. And that hasn't gone away. If anything, that's got stronger. So when you put all that together, those four sets of deliveries, that passion, that way of working, that's a really strong foundation to be entering the next 12 months. So if I pivot from looking back and then look forward for a moment, today's agenda reflects just a snapshot of the things that we could be talking about. We could have you sat in here for days on end. I'm sure you'd enjoy that, listening to us talk about all the things that we're doing, but instead there's just a few of them. You're going to hear about the member's voice, as I say, from Nick, from Donna and from Claudia, because that's what matters most. And it was great that we were hearing real members speaking unscripted about what pensions mean to them. We'll also hear how our approach to investing can both deliver great returns, because that's why we do it, but also make a positive impact on the communities into which we'll all retire. So I'm delighted that Andre Nell, who's CFO of CMR Surgical, one of our investee portfolio companies, will be able to talk about how those things come together. So really looking forward to what he has to say. And we couldn't host a conference in 2026 and not talk about artificial intelligence. So I'm delighted that we will be talking about AI. We've got the global thought leader, Lilia Christofi from PwC, one of our partners working on our AI at Railpen program, joining us to talk about AI in the context of how you deliver that in a responsible, well-governed way in an organization like Railpen on behalf of our members. So hopefully another great session to look forward to. So before I introduce the next section, I'd like to leave you with just one thought. And our theme for the conference is Fit for the Future. Now, my view is that's not a one-off objective. It's an ongoing discipline. And it's a discipline that requires a clear purpose, an obsessive focus on delivery, a good understanding of the changing external environment, and finally, taking absolute accountability for the outcomes that we need to deliver for our members. That is the approach that we're taking at Railpen. That is the approach that you'll be hearing today. So thank you very, very much for coming. I hope you have a really interesting and informative day.